See infrastructure, building a better world.
Hello, Malma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic. As the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. And now to the news. The Philippines will now begin easing 2 months of quarantine to rekindle its bruised economy, but the capital is to remain under tight restrictions. Shopping malls, scaled down public transport, and more business open from Saturday. However, strict stay-at-home orders will still be in effect until the end of May for Manila. Metro Manila, Laguna, and Cebu City will be placed under a modified enhanced community quarantine from May 16 to 31. Let's listen in.
Ano ba ho ibig sabihin at anong pagkakaiba ng modified ECQ sa ECQ? Makikita po natin ito sa table na ito. Sa ilalim po ng modified ECQ, limitado po ang movement ng tao para po sa pagkuha ng essential services and work. Ang pagkakaiba po, bubuksan natin unti-unti ang ekonomiya. Magkakaroon po ng operasyon ang piling manufacturing and processing plants up to a maximum of 50%. Ano po itong mga industriya nito? Isasapinal po ngayong araw yan. At bibigyan natin ng anunsyo kung hindi mamayang hapon. Bukas po, magkakaroon din tayo ng press briefing. Wednesday, normally wala pong press briefing. Magkakaroon po tayo bukas para idetalye kung ano po yung naaproba ng IATF ng mga industriyang magbubukas. Magkakaroon din po tayo siyempre dahil meron ng pasok ang ilang mga industriya sa modified ECQ ng kaunting limited transportation services para po sa mga papasok sa trabaho at para po dun sa magbibigay ng essential goods and services. Suspendido pa rin po ang lahat ng klase sa lahat ng antas. Sa GCQ na matagal na po natin pinag-uusapan, alam naman po natin na limitado rin ang movements, pero ang operasyon ng gobyerno at halos lahat ng industriya ay balik na up to 75%. Ang mga exceptions lamang ay yung mga mataong mga industriya, no? At saka yung para sa amusement at saka yung mga para sa mga kabataan. Pero meron lang po tayong limited na transportation services kung saan oobserbahan po ang social distancing. At po pwede po ang flexible learning, hindi pa rin po pwede ang face-to-face learning. Now, bukas po, ididetalye natin kung ano yung mga industriya sa modified ECQ na po pwede nang mag-operate. Na naglalagay sa, makikita nyo po sa mapa kung ano itong mga low-risk areas. Sa Luzon po, sa Region 1, ito po ang Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, La Union, Pangasinan, Dagupan City. Sa Region 4B, ito po ang Marinduque, Occidental Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, Romblon, Palawan, Puerto Princesa City. Sa Region 5 po, ang Albay, pero meron po yung recommendation na dapat tignan muli ang datos pagdating po ng 14 ng Mayo. Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, Catanduanes, Masbate, Sorsogon, Legazpi City. Titignan din po ang datos pagdating ng 14 May. At Naga City. Nasa low-risk area rin po at hindi na nasa ilalim ng community quarantine sa Region 6, ang Aklan, Antique, Capiz, Guimaras, Iloilo, Negros Occidental, Iloilo City at Bacolod City. Sa Region 8 po, nasa low-risk area, wala na pong community quarantine, ang Biliran, Eastern Samar, Leyte, Northern Samar, Western Samar, Southern Leyte, Ormoc City at Tacloban City. Sa Mindanao naman po, sa Region 10, wala na pong community quarantine sa Bukidnon, Camiguin, Lanao del Norte, Misamis Occidental, Misamis Oriental, Cagayan de Oro City. At sa Region 12, North Cotabato, South Cotabato, Sarangani, Sultan Kudarat, General Santos City. Sa BARM, ang Basilan, Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, Cotabato City. Pero hindi po pwede magpabaya ang mga lugar nito dahil nga po hindi nakikita ang kalaban at po pwedeng pasukan pa rin ang mga lugar nito. Samantala, linagay naman po natin sa orange or mapapasailalim sa GCQ ang mga areas na ito. Sa Luzon po, naka-GCQ ang Cordillera Autonomous Region, Abra, Apayao, Benguet, Ifugao, Kalinga, Mountain Province at Baguio City. Sa Region 2, naka-GCQ rin po ang Batanes, Cagayan, Isabela, Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino at Santiago City. Sa Region 3, Aurora, Bataan, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, Pampanga, Tarlac, Zambales, Angeles City, titignan din po ang datos pagdating ng May 14, Olongapo City. Sa Region 4A, Cavite, titignan din po natin ang datos pagdating ng May 14. Quezon, Rizal, Batangas at Lucena City. Sa Visayas, ang mga lugar pong ito ay nasa ilalim ng GCQ at ito po ay epektibo 16 May hanggang 31 May. Bohol, Cebu, Province po. Cebu Province po yan. Negros Oriental, Siquijor, Mandaue City at ang Lapu-Lapu City. At sa Mindanao naman, nasa ilalim po ng GCQ sa Region 9. Zamboanga del Norte, Zamboanga del Sur, Zamboanga Sibugay, Zamboanga City at Isabela City. Sa Region 11 po, ang Davao City, subject din po sa verification sa 14 May. Davao de Oro, ganun din po. Titignan din po natin ang mga datos pagdating ng May 14. Davao del Norte, Davao del Sur, Davao Occidental, Davao Oriental. At sa Region 13, sa Caraga po, ang mga probinsyang nasa alalim ng GCQ ay ang Agusan del Norte, Agusan del Sur, Dinagat Island, Surigao del Norte, Surigao del Sur, at Butuan City. Meron po tayo ngayong tinatawag na Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine. Ano po ito? Susubukan po nating linawin ngayon. Pero dahil Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, naka-ECQ pa rin, pero meron na pong mga ilang industriya na magbubukas. Ano po itong mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, epektibo ng 16 May hanggang 31 May? Ang probinsya ng Laguna, lahat ng highly urbanized cities ng National Capital Region, kasama na po ang municipality ng Pateros. At sa Visayas, kasama po dyan ang Cebu City.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Health Department reported 292 new virus cases on Monday, taking the nation's total to 11,086, 11,350, and 751 deaths. Recovered cases is 2,106. And a race against time as South Korea announced its highest number of new infections in more than a month, driven by a cluster in a Seoul nightlife district. Christine Jewel Uyabut joins us live from South Korea. Hello, Christine.
Yes, hello. Good evening, Alma.
Good evening, Christine.
That's true. Yes. COVID-19 infected cases in South Korea started to rise again after a 29-year-old tested positive after visiting 5 clubs in Itaewon, Seoul on May 1 to 2 in the first local infection reported. The number of infected continued to rise, affecting 73 people who had been in Itaewon and also 29 others who were infected through secondary transmission. Health authorities here in South Korea are urging the people who visited Itaewon in late April to early May to voluntarily report to the COVID-19 hotline so that they can immediately check for tracing more suspected positives. South Korean authorities are tracking nightclub visitors using mobile phone application, promising anonymity to those being tested due to the stigma involving homosexuality. Many people who visited the nightclub are believed to be reluctant in reporting themselves because of the stigma involving homosexuality, wherein South Korea is not so much socially open about this situation. Seoul, Gyeonggi Province, southern city of Daegu, ordered the closure of all bars and clubs. The government has so far tested 10,300 people, including 8,490 who had signed entry logs at affected areas and those who voluntarily visited screening centers. According to Mayor Park Won-soon, the city has secured a list of 10,905 visitors in the area through the data provided by mobile operators and 494 people through credit card transactions. On Monday, Mayor announced a 2 million won fine of or approximately 1,630 US dollars for those who will avoid testing. Because of the rise of infected cases, the reopening of classes was postponed again into another week. And as of now, there are a total of 10,936 infected cases were recorded, with 9,670 recovered and 258 deaths in South Korea. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Christine. And take care. Stay safe over there in South Korea.
Thank you very much. This is Christine Jewel Uyabut reporting from South Korea. We live in interesting times.
The World Health Organization chief, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, said the resurgence of COVID-19 cases in South Korea, China, and Germany following the lifting of stay-at-home restrictions demonstrates the complexity of easing these measures. Take a look.
Over the weekend, we saw signs of the challenges that may lie ahead. In the Republic of Korea, bars and clubs were shut as a confirmed case led to many contacts being traced. In Wuhan, China, the first cluster of cases since their lockdown was lifted was identified. Germany has also reported an increase in cases since an easing of restrictions. Fortunately, all three countries have systems in place to detect and respond to a resurgence in cases.
And countries like Germany and countries like Korea shouldn't be criticized for looking, for finding, for being alert, for being ready and reacting quickly and engaging quickly to investigate, to isolate, to trace and to track, because that's what we've been saying. The virus is still here. So even as you lift lockdowns, even in low incidence situations, even in a place like Korea, where the incidence or the number of cases per day had dropped to a very low level, they didn't let their guard down. They knew the virus is still here. I think now we're seeing some hope as many countries exit these so-called lockdowns, and this is good. It allows economic life to return. But extreme vigilance is required, and not just vigilance. Many countries, as the DG has said, have made very systematic investments in building up their public health capacities during the lockdowns. Others have not. And we need every country now to put in place the necessary public health measures or the public health surveillance in order to be able to at least have a chance of avoiding larger second waves later. There was an assumption as this disease spread around the world that we're really just seeing the severe cases and the difficult cases. And when the seroepidemiology comes, it will demonstrate that most of the people have been infected and this will all be over and we'll go back to normal business. Well, the preliminary results from the seroepidemiologic studies is showing the opposite. It's showing that the proportion of people with significant clinical illness is actually a higher proportion of all those who've been infected, because the number of people infected in the total population is probably much lower than we expected. And as Maria said, that means we have a long way to go. The evidence thus far is that there is very little evidence to suggest that there are people who are persistently suffering from COVID-19, although when you see the data from the hospitals and the length of admission, it is taking many people a very long time to recover in a hospital environment. And we should expect that when people are discharged, that recovery continues. and people don't necessarily just bounce back to full health. Although when they are discharged from hospital, it is safe for them to return for themselves and their families.
To Japan now, the country appointed its first woman executive director in its 138-year history. Plus, Japan plans to approve its first coronavirus antigen testing kits. Dennis Liu joins us live from Japan. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening to you and to all our televiewers. Good news here in Japan. For the first time in 138 years, a lady was appointed to be an executive director of Japan's central bank. Tokiko Shimizu, 55-year-old banker, was recently appointed and became one of the 6 executives that manage the central bank. Regular business operations. Shimizu worked as a general manager for Europe and a chief representative in London in 2016 until 2018. Based on the year 2018 World Bank data, out of 153 countries in the World Economic Forum's latest Global Gender Gap Index, Japan ranked 121st. Also among the G7 countries for gender equality, according to World Economic Forum, Japan ranks last. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pledged to empower working women through a policy called Womenomics. Womenomics is the idea that women's economic advancement will improve the economy as a whole. Prime Minister Abe has announced it as one of the top priorities of his administration. In other news, Alma, based on the data from a panel of medical experts that was showed last week, out of 100,000 people, Japan only conducted 188 PCR tests. Incomparable with other countries, 3,159 in Italy and 3,044 in Germany. The current typical testing is a sample that is taken from a nasal cavity using cotton swabs. Although the virus tests can be detected quickly, but it produces inaccurate results compared to PCR or polymerase chain reaction tests, a Japanese health minister stated. Although tallies may not be exact due to a 126 million population, some critics said the low testing rate made it hard to detect the virus, which led to a number of sick patients, disabling some hospital services. To further solution the fight for COVID-19 pandemic in Japan, according to a Ministry of Health, and the coronavirus antigen or antibody kits this Wednesday will be ready for the government's approval. The antigen antibody test, after its approval, could help and support PCR testings. Japan reported about 16,680 confirmed infections, 712 here from the cruise ship that were quarantined in Yokohama, and 670 deaths, public broadcaster NHK said. Antigen tests scan for proteins that can be found on or inside a virus. Fujireibo, a subsidiary of Japanese diagnostics and laboratory testing service provider Miraka Holdings, last month applied for government approval of its antigen kit. This is the latest for now. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Dennis. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you much for your time.
Thank you very much. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
To the United Kingdom now, confusion in Prime Minister Boris Johnson's phased opening of the economy. Joining us live from the United Kingdom is JL Bautista. Good evening from Manila, JL.
Hi, Alma. Good evening.
Good to see you. What
So
are your
the
updates for
for
us?
today?
Yes.
Yes. So British Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces questions from journalists and the public after unveiling its 50-page plan to slightly ease the lockdown measures across the UK. Johnson has changed the nationwide stay-at-home slogan and replaced it with "Stay alert," and said in a televised address on Sunday that everyone who was unable to work from home, such as construction and manufacturing workers, was now being actively encouraged to return to work. But as the country enters its 8th week under unequal social and economic restrictions, his call created confusion among the public about when and how they can go to work, leave their homes, or socialize. Some Londoners say they were left with more questions than answers following the Prime Minister's speech, while others claim people are already ignoring the advice. Let's listen in to the reactions.
Business people or people like that, I mean, I don't know too much all about it, but I think they're kind of left in the dark a bit, and I feel a bit bad for them, really.
Begin to allow people to return to their way of life, but crucially, while avoiding what would be a disastrous second peak that overwhelms the NHS.
I don't think there's much change, or that's how it appears to be, apart from the going outside. Still a bit of confusion around who's to go to work and who's not to go to work, and what you're to do if you've got children at home, who's taking care of them. So it doesn't appear there's much change at all.
Well, if anyone can make anything of that, then they're a genius. Why he gave that information out without publishing the 50-page document beforehand seems absolutely pointless, because the devil's always going to be in the detail. But again, it's consistent with how the government has operated throughout this whole period, which is not wanting to make any hard and fast decisions because they don't want to be seen as the bad guys. A lot of people were already sunbathing and in groups, and there weren't any police or wardens up there. So I think it's already started, and that's the problem. I think people are unsure, and some people will not consciously take advantage of it. But already I noticed in there are a couple of people, whereas people had been making sure that they were trying to stay away, just walking straight past you. I think people think, oh, it's probably okay now, and that's the mixed message.
It's not an easy decision, but I think there should be a lot more said for the people that haven't got it as well off of other people, like business people or people like that. I mean, I don't know too much all about it, but I think they're kind of left in the dark a bit, and I feel a bit bad for them, really.
Begin to allow people to return to their way of life, but crucially, while avoiding what would be a disastrous second peak that overwhelms the NHS. After each step, we will closely monitor the impact of that step on the R and the number of infections and all the available data, and will only take the next.
Yes, JL.
Yes, so Johnson defended his new Stay Alert, Control the Virus, Save Lives slogan in Parliament as a valid piece of advice, even though there are criticisms from opposition MPs and leaders in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Johnson had announced the message along with an alert system ranging from level 1 to 5 to help quickly determine how measures can be relaxed without triggering a second wave of infections. Defending his plan on Monday, Johnson accepted that further lockdown rules might be put back or lifted for some parts of the UK, but not others. Prime Minister Johnson also added, if everyone stays alert and follows the rules, we can control the virus, keep the rate of infection and the number of infections down. Back to you, Alma.
All right. So earlier you mentioned about the you mentioned an alert system was announced to help with relaxing the measures without triggering a second wave of infections. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, of course, Alma. So there are 5 alert levels that will be used to inform the easing or tightening of lockdown restrictions. The system is designed to mirror the independent terror alert system. Level 5 is critical. This level would require a strict lockdown and means the virus is quickly spreading and could overwhelm the NHS. Level 4 is severe. This is the level the UK is currently at and means the NHS is stretched but is coping. Level 3 is substantial. This means the virus is in general circulation and the NHS is operating at extra capacity. Some restrictions will need to stay in place, but it will be safe to relax some measures. Level 2 is moderate. This means there is a low level of transmitting the virus and the NHS is operating normally. Schools and businesses should be able to open, subject to social distancing measures. Level 1 is low. This means the virus is no longer present in the UK, no behavioral restrictions will be needed, and public and private sectors will be able to operate normally. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, JL. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Alma. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, this is JL Bautista, and we live in interesting times.
To Russia now, the country has the second highest coronavirus tally in the world. More from our Moscow bureau correspondent, Emmy Coloma. Hello, Emmy.
Hello, Alma.
Good evening from Manila. Kumusta?
I'm good po. Mabuti naman po.
Good. So what are your updates for us, Emmy?
Okay. Russia became the second in the world in the number of confirmed cases of coronavirus infection. The number of infected in the Russian Federation reached 232,243. Russia bypassed Spain and took second place in the world in the number of officially confirmed cases of coronavirus infection. This follows from task calculation based on a statement by the authorities of this country. Russian President Vladimir Putin addressed the Russians about the fight against coronavirus. The Russian leader announced that the day of regime is over, but the fight against epidemics continues. The way out of restrictive measure cannot be instantaneous. Last Sunday, Russia ranked 5th in the world in terms of the number of infected people, but the next day, it rose 2 places at once, overtaking Great Britain and Italy. In the evening of the same day, the United Kingdom returned to 3rd place for a short while. Now, 224,332 cases of infection have been confirmed in the country. The incidence in Russia in terms of 100,000 inhabitants is much lower than in Spain, about 158 cases against almost 487. In the UK, this figure is about 337. In Italy, a little less than 364. End of non-working days and removal restriction. The day of ends on May 11. The president noted that the measure taken earlier allow us to proceed to the beginning of a phased exit from restriction. It is emphasized that such an exit cannot be simultaneous. It is necessary to do this consistently and strictly observing all conditions and sanitary requirements. From May 12, both general sanitary requirements and additional preventive measures in the regions should be preserved. The president said. Enterprises working in the basic sectors of the economy will have to resume work if possible on May 12, and for workers whose enterprises have not yet resumed operations, salaries should be maintained. At the same time, mass events have not yet resumed. Putin noted that every region of the country is now ready to provide assistance to infected coronavirus. According to him, we are talking about including resuscitation care. More than 90% of passengers in Moscow Metro put on medical masks. Only about 70% use gloves. In the morning, 94% of mask passenger and 68% of gloves went down the subway. According to the deputy mayor of the capital, Maxim Liksutov, who is quoted by the press service, from 5:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., passenger purchased 2,835 masks and 8,648 pairs of gloves of the Metro ticket offices. From May 12 in Moscow, the Moscow region and other regions of Russia, mask and gloves modes are introduced in public transport, shops, and enterprises. Traveling by public transport is possible only with masks and gloves. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Emmy. Mag-iingat kayo dyan. Stay safe,
Thank
stay
you.
healthy.
Thank you. Reporting from Moscow, Russia. This is Emmy Coloma. We live in interesting times.
Eagle News, we'll be right back.
The Bulacan Bulk Water Project is a treatment facility that will provide bulk water to the 24 municipalities of Bulacan to meet the increasing water demand of its residents. Through concessionaire, SMC Infrastructure also initiated the significant improvements of the Manila North Harbor Port, the country's busiest port.
We are urging our viewers and listeners around the world to help raise COVID-19 relief from PPEs to relief goods. The primary beneficiary of the proceeds will go to the FYM Medical Foundation that also supports the New Era General Hospital, which maintains a biocontainment facility, also intended for COVID-19 patients.
Here are the many ways to donate and be able to help health workers and frontliners through the FYM Medical Foundation as our beneficiary. First, donate via pymy.co/EBC. Just use any Visa, MasterCard, or JCB credit, debit, or prepaid card and donate by logging on to pymy.co/EBC. Just choose an amount you wish to donate and enter your card details. Second, donate via the PayMaya app. If you have a PayMaya account, you can easily donate by scanning the QR code you see on the screen. Just log on to your app, click the scan button, point your camera to the QR code that you see on the screen, and enter the amount you wish to donate. Third, donate via PayPal. For PayPal app users, just log on to eaglenews.ph and click the PayPal Donate Now button found at the upper portion of the website. Input the amount you wish to donate, click Use this donation for Enjoy Music Beyond the Crisis, and choose between Donate with PayPal or Donate with a credit card in order to enter your additional information. Fourth, donate directly to the EBC bank account that is flashing on your screens. You can complete transactions online or directly with your banks. Wherever you are in the world, you can easily help those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, even while at home, through our beneficiary, FYM Medical Foundation. Donate now and watch out for the next performances of Enjoy Music Beyond the Crisis EBC 52nd Anniversary Special on Net25 and on all social media channels on May 10th and 17th, 2020. Together, let's all do our part and stand as one against COVID-19. This is Julianne. We live in interesting times.
And in New Zealand, the country will phase out its coronavirus lockdown over the next 10 days after successfully containing the virus, although some restrictions will still remain. Here's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern.
New information about the virus indicates it could be spread prior to a person becoming symptomatic, meaning it can be passed on by seemingly healthy people. The scientists who have advised us so well to date say there is still a chance of silent spread in the future and therefore cases taking off again. So, today, I am announcing that Cabinet agrees We are ready to move into level 2, to open up the economy, but to do it as safely as possible. So let me set out how we will do that. On Thursday this week, retail, malls, cafes, restaurants, cinemas, and other public spaces, including playgrounds and gyms, can reopen. All will be required to have physical distancing and strict hygiene measures in place. You can begin to move around New Zealand, but space yourself out, especially if you're using public transport. And of course, health services will restart. On Monday, 18 May, all children and young people will be able to return to school and early learning. This staging is to give parents, teachers and education facilities time to plan. And finally, on Thursday, 21 May, bars will be able to open with all the requirements set out last week, including that seating must be provided, there must be space between tables, and there mustn't be multiple waiters and waitresses serving a single table. We have left bars till last because they do pose the most risk. As we can see from South Korea that recently opened up their bars only to close them again after one person created an outbreak of 40 people and caused 1,500 tests. But there does have to be a new normal. And that normal means that we will be breaking out of our bubbles. We will be around more people. But we can do that and get more activity going if we balance that with keeping our distance and keeping our social gatherings small for now.
Australia's Treasurer Josh Frydenberg was tested for coronavirus on Tuesday after suffering a coughing fit in Parliament that left him breathless and reaching for water. Take a look.
And Adrian, owner of an auto business. Sorry. Sorry. Lucky I've got some water. Too long a speech.
Now, Mr. Frydenberg's coughing fit came as he told Parliament in Canberra about the economic impact the virus was having on the nation. After regaining his voice, he finished outlining the expected biggest fall on record for the nation's GDP, which is predicted to drop over 10% in the June quarter. He later said he'd been advised to undergo a test for the virus and was now in isolation waiting for the result expected Wednesday. India's enormous railway network was grinding back to life as a gradual lifting of the world's biggest coronavirus lockdown gathered pace even as new cases surged. Take a look. The country of 1.3 billion imposed a strict shutdown in late March, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has credited with keeping cases to a modest 70,000 with around 2,000 deaths. But the lockdown, which enters its 50th day on Wednesday, has torpedoed the economy, snatching the livelihoods of tens of millions of people and hitting the poor the hardest. Whole industries have been devastated and there are fears of food shortages, while a ban on flights has left hundreds of thousands of Indians stranded abroad. Restrictions have been steadily eased, however, particularly in rural areas, and some Indian trains on a network which normally carries over 20 million passengers a day were scheduled to resume on Tuesday. Eagle News will be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Nadarama mo ba ang dilim ng makapal na ulap na pumipigil? Kagutom at kahirapan sa bayan, mga suliranin, pagkakaintindi ay pinakakait. Sisilip na ang liwanag sa kalangitan, sama-sama nating ipaglaban. Bangon Pilipinas, bumangon ka sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Hihinto rin ang pagluha, sasalubong ang ngiti, matatanaw mo ang pag-asa sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Nasasabik na muling makalipad, hawak ang dibdib, nakatayong mata niya. Tinatanaw ang araw na sisikat, kapit ang pag-asa, tayo'y magkaisa at sa Diyos tumawag. Sisilip na ang liwanag sa kalangitan, sama-sama nating ipaglaban. Bangon Pilipinas, bumangon ka sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Hihintuin ang pagluha, sasalubong ang ngiti, matatanaw mo ang pag-asa sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Di alintana ang bantang sinasalubong, basta sa bayan ay handa laging tumulong. Bangon Pilipinas, bumangon ka sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Hihinto rin ang pagluha, sasalubong ang ngiti, matatanaw mo ang pag-asa sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Bangon Pilipinas, bumangon ka sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Hihinto rin ang pagluha, sasalubong ang ngiti, matatanaw mo ang pag-asa sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani. Matatanaw mo ang pag-asa sa tulong ng mga bagong bayani.
China suspended imports from 4 major Australian beef suppliers on Tuesday, just weeks after Beijing's ambassador warned of a consumer boycott in retaliation for Canberra's push to probe the origins of the coronavirus. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Mr. Zhao Lijian told reporters in Beijing that the suspension was due to violations of inspection and quarantine requirements. Take a look.
我们注意到有关报道，据了解，中国海关在对进口肉类产品进行查验时，连续发现澳大利亚个别企业多批次输华牛肉产品存在违反双方主管部门共同确定的 检验检疫要求的情况。
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao also blasted Australia's demand for a coronavirus inquiry as erroneous words and deeds and warned against using the epidemic to engage in political manipulation. But he denied the link between the suspension and the inquiry, saying they're two completely different things. Beijing has also flagged major tariffs on Australian barley over allegations it's dumping the grain in China, selling it for less than it costs to produce. The Australian Financial Review newspaper cited confidential documents as saying Beijing is considering duties of 73.6%. Tensions between the two have increased since Australia started calling for an independent investigation into the origin of the coronavirus outbreak, which began in China before spreading around the world, killing more than 280,000 people, infecting millions, and shattering the global economy. Federal Trade Minister Simon Birmingham said shipments of meat from 4 abattoirs and had been suspended over minor technical breaches related to Chinese health and labeling certificate requirements. In other news, Toyota on Tuesday said it expected a 79.5% drop in its annual operating profit this fiscal year as it suffers significant fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. The Japanese auto giant declined to give a net profit forecast for the fiscal year to March 2021, but noted that the impact of the crisis on its business was wide-ranging, significant, and serious. The company now expects an annual operating profit of 500 billion yen, or $4.6 billion, down 79.5% from the 2.44 trillion yen logged in the past year to March. Toyota forecasts a near 20% drop in annual sales to 24 trillion yen, compared with 29.93 trillion yen achieved in the past fiscal year. The company's net profit for the past year to March came to 2.076 trillion yen, up to 10.3% on the year. As for the global economy going forward, there's concern that there will be a sharp decline in many countries and regions due to the impact of COVID-19, Toyota said in a statement. While we assume that the global automobile market as a whole will gradually recover after bottoming out during April and June of 2020, the impact of COVID-19 is wide-ranging, significant, and serious, and it's expected that weakness will continue for the time being. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council on Tuesday urged all local government units in flood and landslide-prone areas to take necessary precautions on the looming onslaught of Tropical Depression Ambo. Pag-asa, during the pre-disaster risk assessment meeting, said Ambo will bring scattered light to moderate with isolated heavy rains during thunderstorms over Mindanao, and these may cause moderate to rough seas in the eastern seaboards of eastern Visayas, Caraga, Davao Oriental, and Davao Occidental. Ambo may also intensify into a tropical storm and expected to make landfall over the Bicol region on Thursday evening or Friday morning. Let's listen in.
Davao City, Surigao del Norte, ibig sabihin ang sentro po nito ay nasa karagatan pa rin ho. So, ina-anticipate natin na nag-iipon pa po ito ng lakas habang nasa karagatan. Bandang South Philippines Sea ho yan. At inaasahan natin, posible pa po ito mag-intensify o lumakal sa ating kalupaan. At sa next track o latest track na ipinalabas ng Pag-asa as of 2 p.m. today, huling namata ng sentro nito dito nga sa silangang bahagi ng Caraga region at ng Eastern Visayas. At inaasahan ho natin na sa susunod na 24 oras, approximately, ang sentro niya ay nasa 305 o nasa layong 305 kilometers silangan ng Borongan, Eastern Samar. Ibig sabihin, mas lalapit na ho ito ng bahagya sa kalupaan ng Visayas landmass. Pero ang significant ho na update nito, after 2 days or 48 hours, posible na ang mata nito ay nasa layo na ng 115 kilometers silangan ng Katarman, Northern Samar. Ibig sabihin, mas lalapit na po ang sentro ng bagyong ito sa ating kalupaan at magbibigay na ho ito ng banta sa ating mga kababayan, especially dito sa Eastern Visayas at maging sa Bicol region. Mag-uumpisa na hong maramdaman doon ang pagbugso ng hangin at mga pagbuhos ng ulan na dulot nitong bagyo. Direct impact na ho yun ng bagyong si Ambo. At inaasahan natin, by that time, mas malakas na ho ito, pwede pong abutin nito ang severe tropical storm category. Pag sinabi ho nating severe tropical storm category, pwede pong abutin nito ang 100 kilometers per hour near the center na maximum sustained winds. So hindi po ito pwedeng ipagsawalang bahala dahil maaari na po itong magpatumba ng mga kahoy, manira ng mga tahanan o bahay, at pwede rin ho itong magpaapaw ng ilog dahil sa lakas nito, at yung mga pag-ulan na dala din ng bagyong ito ay posible rin magdulot ng mga pagbaha. Kaya't iba yung pag-iingat at abiso natin sa ating mga kababayan doon na as early as now ay umpisa na pong maghanda para sa pagdating o sa inaasahan nating paglapit nito sa ating kalupaan.
Environmentalists have criticized Laos for pressing ahead with plans for another, quote, destructive dam on the Mekong River, a waterway already strangled by hydropower schemes. Take a look.
มันก็งงกันนะมันไม่มีกำหนดนะเราไม่รู้เขาจะปล่อยตอนไหนที่จริงถ้าเขาจะปล่อยเขาต้องบอกเขาต้องแจ้งมาชาวบ้านได้เตรียมตัวทันอันนี้เราไม่ทราบว่าเขาจะปล่อยวันไหนก็มันอยู่ก็เหมือนเซ็งมันเหมือนไม่มีชีวิตชีวาเลยนะรู้สึกว่ามันไม่สัมพันธ์กับการดำเนินชีวิตของชาวบ้านเมื่อแต่ก่อนที่เราเคยหาปลาได้มันก็ไม่ได้ให้ปล่อยเป็นตามฤดูกาลเหมือนแต่ก่อนถ้าพร้อมกันนะคงทำได้นะถ้าทำแบบนี้เหมือนไม่เห็นใจคนที่หากินตามลำโขง
The flow of the Mekong, Southeast Asia's longest river, is interrupted by a cascade of dams in China, where it's called the Lancang. Two downstream dams, the Xayaburi and Don Sahong, have been built in Laos, which wants to construct 7 more as it strives to live up to its billing as the Battery of Asia. Water levels have dropped to record lows over the last year, exposing rocks and killing fish, a phenomenon blamed by villagers in Thailand and Laos on the operations of dams. On Monday, Laos Communist government submitted proposals for the Sanakam Dam, close to the northeastern border with Thailand, to the Mekong River Commission, or MRC. The MRC is a dam consultation body for Mekong nations, but has been accused of being toothless in stopping river projects sponsored by governments and the big businesses. The MRC said the Sanakam Dam consultation includes an environmental impact assessment on the waterway and its communities. Landlocked, corrupt, and poor Laos has turned to billion-dollar hydropower schemes for investment, hoping to sell the electricity for a profit to its neighbors as well as provide energy to its remote populations. But critics say dams have been railroaded despite mounting evidence of ecological damage to one of the world's most biodiverse waterways. Villagers along the Mekong in Laos and Thailand say their fish catch has dwindled as the dams have come online, and studies show sediment flow has thinned, leaving the river increasingly anemic as it winds towards the Vietnamese delta. The Mekong feeds around 60 million people. And that's all the time we have for you today. Before we close, we'll leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program was brought to you by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Iba't iba man ang